Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Monday the 17th of July. Middle of the month already. This year is flying by. Assistant editor Steve Withers is here.
I'm awfully sorry, but I'm afraid we're going to have to occupy your house.
News editor Mark Hodgkinson.
I don't want to hear anymore. Is there any more?
Audio reviewer Ed Selley.
I've got lunatics laughing at me from the woods.
And our special guest star this week is Mark Botwright.
Christ, not us again.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And Mark's one. No, I'm afraid it goes on for another hour and a half yet, Mark. Right, so bit of an odd one this. You know, companies get so big these days that they then think that they can put together a holiday where you go and buy lots of things from them. So we've seen Black Friday, which is basically a load of retailers getting together in the States, putting on a sale. Although it's a load of dross usually in the sales, but it gets people in the door. Now Amazon are trying it on with their Prime Day. I really can't get past. This is capitalism gone too far, Ed.
Oh, I didn't buy anything on Prime Day. I need to be very clear about this.
Neither did I. I'm not a Prime member. So.
Wait till we get to Mark.
But I don't know. It's one of those things where, I mean, I don't know how well it stood up to repeat use, but I do get the idea. The first time they did it, wasn't it that everything was entitled to Prime shipping, even for non-Prime members and stuff like that? And it was just basically, you know, here's the brave new world of ordering it, and on some occasions it will be there the next day, and on some occasions if you ordered it in the morning it would be there on the same day, and that's quite mad in its own way. And I sort of saw the point to it. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. It's ultimately it lives or dies on the media paying attention to it, and I just, you know, if the media decided that, you know, it's not not something that's newsworthy, it would have died on its arse. But regrettably, it didn't. There was a cracking tweet though from someone who went, you know, in 1990s, Amazon, hi, we sell books online. You know, Amazon 2030. Good morning, Prime citizens. Retreat to your Prime houses and wait for your Prime meals, and, you know, sort of stuff like that. It's like, yes.
Which is kind of what I was trying to get at, Ed. It's like dictating to us now that we will go and shop it, and the media get behind it. I mean, I could not believe the tech sites and all the others that, oh, Amazon Prime Day, you know, must do this, it's just a sale.
No, it's one of those things. I mean, the irony is, actually yesterday I had to go into the town centre of Milton Keynes, which I do very rarely.
Cool.
Can make it sound like something from a sci-fi film.
I'll tell you what, Mark. I've been a couple of times, and each occasion I've had to walk through that shopping centre, but it's open to the elements, and the wind that comes through there, and the restaurants in there, you know, good on them. They were upbeat and happy because they were putting tables and chairs out for people to sit outside. And there's no heat sit outside. It was like -6, the wind coming through there.
Well, to be fair, that wasn't an issue yesterday. But I was trying to say more on message. Having attended to the tasks I needed to do, I actually went into HMV, you know, mainly out of a sense of masochism. And sure enough, their record section is mainly expensive repressings of things you can buy much cheaper as the originals. But all power to them. They had an album which I've been umming and ahhing about buying, and it was there in stock, and it was less than it would have cost me on Amazon. So I bought it. Go high street. And the next time I return to the town centre in about 6 months' time, I might do the same thing again. So, you know, I was quite impressed with that. But no, spent no money on Prime Day.
Did you get a carrier bag with it?
I'm afraid I have reached that juncture in life where I generally have a bag for life with me at all times anyway, because I had to...
You're not alone. You're not alone.
I had to go and collect a number of other things.
Well, it's only 5 pence.
No, it's more... I had to collect... Well, I've got to be careful here because there's birthday presents involved in this, but I had to collect 2 objects which wouldn't sit happily
hang on. Should I just take out my earphones? That's all right. That's all right.
It just struck me as, look, you know, I've always got a bag for life in the back of the car, so I took that in and put it all in there. It worked fine. If you find me sad for that, then I'm in a good place with that.
No, what I was going to get onto was the fact that it's a sight that you don't see on the high street anymore, is people walking along with carrier bags with 12-inch records in them. It used to be a common sight on the high streets of Great Britain.
To be fair, actually HMV have gone all in because their carrier bags now are pretty much only suitable for carrying a 12-inch record. If you put anything else in, they look really stupid. So, you know, that's fair enough.
They've got to make it worthwhile for the 5 pence charge. Right, so who spent an awful lot of money on Amazon Rubbish Day?
Me. I spent a lot of money.
Did you?
I haven't added it up yet, but I bought probably about 12 things. I get the first thing I bought. It was started the night before on the Tuesday. Is that right? And the up at the sorry,
is that like Advent?
Yeah, it was like it was Prime Day Eve. Yeah, that's what it was. And they were doing the Amazon Echo at $79.99, and I'd quite fancied one anyway. So I just dived in and bought one of them, and that was that. And it arrived, and I was quite happy. But that enthused me to buy 2 Echo Dots for the kids for Christmas. I bought early Christmas presents, and that they were £35 each from $49.99, which I thought was a really good buy. I bought, for no particularly good reason, other than it was really late, I bought Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, some sort of special edition, and because I'd seen something on Facebook, and it said if you click through, it ends up at like $7.99 or something, and it did. So just on principle that it was really cheap, I bought that. I'll never play it, but it was $7.99.
This is what the world's coming to.
It's not the world's coming. It's just because it was cheap. I bought it.
Don't add up. Never add up the individual prices. Add up how much you've saved. Then you'll feel better.
Exactly. I saved £42.99 on that, and I feel quite proud of it.
And you spent £1,000.
Yeah. I bought some high quality kitchen, or so they said on the box, kitchen scissors, which are almost like shears, like garden shears, except for your kitchen for cutting up, bones and chickens and what have you. But they're really good. I'm quite pleased. They were a grand total of £10.99. I bought a Waiter's Mate corkscrew, walnut finish, spring loaded, very nice.
Well, it had to be walnut finish. It couldn't have any other fish.
No, very nice. Oh no, it's actually rosewood. Sorry, I'm lying. Rosewood. $5.99.
Mark, would I be right? Would I be right in saying that the shopping channels are disabled on your TV at home?
Actually, yeah.
For your own good.
Does Mrs. Hodgkinson have to issue you with the card?
I'm not normally like this. So I something about Prime Day just got me all in. I bought a mouse mat, a keyboard and mouse mat, which is too small. That cost £11. It doesn't fit my mouse. I can only fit the keyboard on it. I'll probably never send that back because I just can't be bothered. I bought a pot. Have you ever heard of pop sockets? No. There's like a cupboard handle you stick on the back of your phone so you don't drop them. That wasn't for me. That was for my daughter. She wanted one. And then 480 tea bags, Clipper organic everyday unbleached tea bags. The premium tea bag for me, $7.99 for 480 bags. That was cheap because they're normally $14.48. And finally, I bought it's a little sandwich box type of thing you use to carry cable. It's like a cable organizer for traveling.
So basically the PR worked on you big time.
Hook, line, and sinker. I don't know what.
It'll have been all those news at AVForums emails landing talking about Prime Day this and Prime Day that.
It probably was. It probably got to me. Normally we've done a little thing when it's been Black Friday and all that kind of thing. We've done little features, haven't we, and little stuff. And I just ended up doing that, except not putting it in print and actually just buying all the items available. So I spent something like 147 quid on.
That's why Jeff Bezos is a billionaire.
Yeah. But joking about, I got some good bargains.
You keep telling yourself that, mate. You keep telling
I got to say, I came quite close to dropping a ton of money because I've been thinking. I'm definitely going to buy a bean to cup coffee machine at some point, and they did have quite a nice one available on Prime Day, down from I think 900 quid to about 400 quid or 3,999. It's a bit out of my price.
Will that sort out your croaky voice?
No. So that was a possibility, but I thought it's a bit toppy on the price. Even at half the price, it's still, or even more than half the price. I still thought it was a bit toppy, so I didn't. I ended up just buying. I bought a PSVR game. I bought Star Trek Bridge Crew, which apparently is very good.
I almost bought a PS4 Pro with VR as well. I was very close to that.
You were really going for it.
It really was, yeah. But that was what was it? It was something like I had 3 games: the camera, the VR headset, and obviously PS4 Pro. It was something like 575 quid or something. It was cheap.
That's actually quite good.
Yeah, Jeez. No, there were some genuinely good deals about.
Jesus, that's about 8 tanks of fuel.
Yeah.
Well, we all have different ways of calculating this. I think in albums. Phil thinks in mileage.
Steve thinks in UHD Blu-rays.
Blu-rays, yeah.
Mr. Botwright, it'll be in games, is it for you?
Yeah. And I did almost buy a PS4 Pro on Prime Day as well. Only I don't have the TV to go with it, so. And
I take it they didn't have any B7s available. That's what you're going for, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Hopefully, at some point.
Good stuff.
I thought there were some decent deals about. I think it's quite hard to kind of build a buzz around, an online shopping day. Unlike Black Friday, you won't get images of, people fighting over Polaroid TVs or anything. So, I thought they did reasonably well.
I think the whole Black Friday thing's backfired on them, really. That year where everybody, that was staged for the TV cameras and that, putting the people at the door and rushing in and all the rest of it. And it backfired on them big style. And I think a lot of retailers now are kind of stepping back from the whole Black Friday. I think they'll still have their sales and all the rest of it, but they're not going for the over-the-top PR spin that they did, because I think, Steve, they got their hands burnt.
It did. And also, I think, people need to remember that Black Friday started in the States, where that Friday is the Friday after Thanksgiving, which is traditionally people take a day off. So they go shopping in the stores on Black Friday. They got the day off. They go and do the sales. Whereas obviously in the UK, it's not a holiday. So having a sale in a store seems a bit pointless. I think where it has been successful has obviously been online sales on that day, because obviously you can do it from your desk at work, or if you can do it from home, you don't have to worry about trying to get into the stores. But yeah, I think as British people, the idea of us all queuing and fighting to buy Polaroid TVs just doesn't look good on TV. And it's not our thing, is it? We're above that kind of behaviour. We're not Americans.
And I think if you look closely, I mean, maybe at Amazon there was some decent things to have there. Most notably on their own product, like what Mark bought, the Echo and the Dots and stuff. There was some good bargains that we had there on their product. But you look elsewhere, and you look Black Friday and all the rest of it, there's maybe one or two really good deals on really good bits of kit if you're looking at electronics, but the rest just a load of rubbish, really. It's stuff that's sitting in the stockroom that they can't get rid of.
Yeah, they're just trying to clear crap, aren't they? They can't sell.
Yeah.
That's what most sales are about.
Yeah, but it's not like the American sales. They really do go out, and there are some absolute stonking bargains to be had, because, like you say, it's a public holiday over there. Everybody goes out shopping. It's the last sort of big shop before Christmas as well, so it's when the Christmas shopping period starts over there as well. So it's a big traditional thing. Like you said, it doesn't work over here, and the retailers, you'll get one or two big deals that go really, really quickly. There's maybe only 2 or 3 to do the whole country, and then the rest it's just tap.
I think most people spend Black Friday in this country looking at the RRP that's claimed and saying it was never that price.
Yeah, there's a lot of that goes on as well. Anyway, let's move things on. How do you fancy joining us at BAFTA? And when I say us, I mean me and Steve. We're going along there because Philips are holding a TV tech shootout. They're going to be putting OLED against QLED. It's not really a shootout in the sense of these things that happen in America and all the rest of it, and they're all looking for the best TV and all the rest of it. It's more of an educational event, because Philips have Quantum Dot and they also have OLED in their lineup, and it's more a case of putting the two together and then looking at the different TV technologies and which might suit you better than the other, and what are the strengths and weaknesses of each. So it should be an interesting evening. It's happening on the 3rd of August at BAFTA in central London. If you want to join us, then send an email which is in the front page of the forum. So you need to go to the front page of the forums. It's bottom of the top section. You'll see the story. Click through on that. There's an email address within there, and send an email through to book your place. I think there's 25 places on there. We'll have a waiting list as well, just for people who might fall out or drop out at the last minute. So if you want to come along and meet Steve in person, you'll be signing autographs. And so if you want to come along, you want to meet us, you want to see the TV tech, and also Philips head of TV picture, Danny Tack, will be there as well, or at least he's hoping to be there. Very interesting guy. He'll talk all about picture processing and picture quality and all that kind of thing. He does a really good presentation. He's Mr. TV Picture when it comes to Philips TVs. So if you want to come along to that event, then search out the story on the homepage, click the email, and email us to join in. So I'm going to go to Mr. Bot right now. Competitions.
Okay, yep. You can win a copy of London Heist on DVD, and that one ends on the 20th of July. And you can also win a Scan exclusive CEDIA luxury gaming chair worth £220, and that one ends on 30th of August.
Okay, some interesting competition prizes there. And any previous competition winners?
Oh, yes. St. Blob won L on Blu-ray. Nice username.
Right, okay, so that's the competitions. Let's move on to some hardware stuff. And Ed, you've been looking at some AV speakers for a change. Normally hi-fi speakers, but these are AV speakers from ATC. ATC been around for a long time, and there is a bit of a niche market for them, but it's nice to see them coming a bit more mainstream these days.
Yes, that sort of started a few years ago. They launched the SCM series, their entry-level speakers. That would have been about 2014. We've had a look at them in both a 5.1 package, and we've looked at the 40 floor standards, and they managed to still be ATCs, but they're a little bit more room friendly, a little bit more cosmetically inoffensive, shall we say. But they've gone and done something quite interesting. Now, I saw these at Munich, and there was an announcement about them. They have gone and produced what are called the HTS series of loudspeakers. And essentially, these are the stereo members of the SCM family converted into wall-mounted satellite speakers. And it sort of was a bit of an interesting one because of all the companies that were sort of in the position to do that, I didn't have ATC pegged as the people that were going to. And it sort of asked an interesting question then, well, what happens when you try a 5-channel pack of those? So I did. And it's genuinely quite an impressive achievement because ATC have a couple of advantages as a brand in terms of turning a pair of conventional stand-mount speakers into a wall-mounted pair of speakers. None of their entry-level series have a base port, so that makes no odds to the driver or crossover in an absolute sense when they simply put them in a different sealed cabinet. And they have then in turn just adjusted the behavior of the crossover and the drivers to an extent where it takes into account the level of wall reinforcement from being so close to a vertical surface.
So basically they've designed in the boundary gain.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you look on the website, I mean, ATC are the most pessimistic company on earth for measurements. But they basically, if you look at the SCM7 and the HTS7, the HTS7, as near as makes no difference, has a full extra octave at the bottom end, which is quite an achievement. And what's more, that does seem to be borne out in some testing. Obviously, you may be disappointed to learn that I didn't do a full-on wall mount for all 5 loudspeakers, but I was able to essentially get them right up against a wall for testing and so on and so forth. And yes, it genuinely pays dividends. And it sort of got me thinking because, when we go to serious cinema installs, wall-mounted speakers are completely the norm, and yet it doesn't seem to be an area where outside of small satellite speakers that we commercially, domestically, there seems to be that much interest in it, which always strikes me as peculiar because what you're being offered is a fairly high performance solution that also then doesn't eat into any of the available floor space that you have.
I mean the M&Ks I tested recently, both sets of the M&Ks. So I did the stand mount version of the S150 and then the wall version. No difference. Absolutely no difference in sound quality, even though one is designed to go up against the wall and the other one was designed to be stand mount and away from the wall. No difference in terms of performance and sound quality when I had them together. And then I didn't bother with the stand mounts when it came to reviewing the higher end ones because I knew that the wall mounts, which I'm still using as a reference system at the minute, work absolutely perfectly fine up against the wall as they're designed to do, and they sound absolutely stonking for it. And the other advantage there is if you're using an EQ system, it actually helps the EQ system out as well because it hasn't got to worry about that, hasn't got to worry about boundary gain and all the rest of it when it comes to correcting it. So certainly systems like the Langdorf system that I tested recently, they actually say put the speakers up against the wall because their system, the way it works out the processes and the filters for the room, it helps it out. So there's a lot of plus points to high performance wall mounted speakers.
It seems to be just something that we're just reluctant, perhaps as consumers, to get in on.
If I could do it, Ed, what I would do, and certainly Steve will back me up on this, because this is experiments that we've done together. If I could get away with it without eating into my room by a foot, I would actually have a complete fabric wall with my acoustically transparent screen and the speakers hidden behind that wall. There's just something about the fact that if you can't see the speaker, it makes the experience more enjoyable. It opens up the sound stage that little bit more, because your mind's not playing tricks on you by looking at the speaker that's in front of you. And that might sound like bollocks, but me and Steve have done the experiment and it works. It absolutely... There's just something about hiding the speaker away so you can't see the speaker behind the surface that just opens up the presentation. Am I talking bollocks, Steve?
Not at all. Definitely, if you have the option to make the speakers invisible, basically from where you're sat in a dedicated room, it makes a vast difference to your experience. I know it sounds crazy, but just basically, if you go into a cinema, into a commercial cinema, you'll see that, okay, you can occasionally see speakers on the sides, but basically they're certainly at the front. You can't see them, and generally you can't see them at the sides and rear either. And it creates a sense of the sound just filling the room without any point of reference, and therefore it makes it a more immersive experience.
Yeah, it's something weird about the brain being able to see where the sound's coming from. It's strange.
The other thing I think that ATC have been very clever about is by taking an existing range of loudspeakers and essentially creating this sub-range from there. It does mean that if you were taken with the SCM40s as a stereo loudspeaker, and there's no reason why you shouldn't, because obviously when I reviewed them, they were ridiculously good, you could then essentially give them room space, but they could be then integrated into a surround pack with just 3 of the HTS7s on wall. It's the same basic driver, same tweeter and same basic driver assembly in all of them. Alternatively, if you want to go all in, they've created a wall mounting version of the SCM40, the HTS. I mean, obviously a 40-litre, what is essentially a wall-mounted floor stander. It's not small, but again, if space is at a premium, that seems to be it's quite an impressive achievement. And what I like about them is that whilst there are some concessions to making them domestically quite friendly bits of kit, they haven't compromised at all on any of the oily bits. I don't think as a brand they could bring themselves to do that, and it really pays off. They were one of the products, I suspect, when it comes to summing everything up at the end of the year, one of the most genuinely surprising things that I'm likely to have tested, simply because when I was looking back on the notes from when I tested the SCM7 multi-channel system, it was appreciably pretty much the same, but with the benefit that if it was a full-on install in my own house, it would have taken up a vast amount less space.
Yeah, good stuff. So that review should be up on this site by the time you listen to this podcast, or certainly the week that this podcast is out there. So keep your eyes open for that one. Let's move on to Mr. Botwright. A bit of a special day for you on Monday, is it not?
Sorry. Just knocked over a hip flask.
Barely. Is that what you've been reduced to? Quick swigs of whiskey during this podcast.
How dare you? Slow gin.
All right.
Yes, it will be my birthday.
Okay, many happy returns for Monday.
Yeah.
And what age are you now?
29 again.
It's funny that, because I'm always 21. There you go. Yeah, so happy birthday. Right, it just says on my running order, Mark updates us with the latest gaming news. I can see Steve spent a lot of time putting this together.
Deliberately vague.
Well, I told Steve there was pretty much nothing going on in gaming at the moment because, we're in the kind of post-E3 lull. But a couple of bits came out and might pique Ed's interest and perhaps even yours, Phil. Gran Turismo Sport finally has a release date. Polyphony Digital's first kind of outing for its Sony exclusive racing series on the PlayStation 4. Even though it comes with the moniker Sport, it's actually a mainline game. It's not an offshoot in the kind of concept or prologue style. It's a series now kind of known as much for delays. It was supposed to be out at the tail end of last year. There was supposed to be an open beta, and it turned into a closed one at a later date, I think, largely because when people first saw the game, there was some criticism that it looked a little rough around the edges. Now we've had a new trailer drop, and it seems like the release date now is October the 18th this year. Probably more likely to keep this date, as it kind of ties in quite closely to when Forza Motorsport 7 on the Xbox One is going to release on October the 3rd. So, spirit of competition might ensure that it holds to that date. As you'd expect, given it's kind of a big flagship title and very much of the shinier variety that Sony like to show off, it's going to support PSVR as well as PlayStation Pro support in 4K and HDR. So, it sounds like they've taken the time to polish it. And also first time, I think they're featuring Porsches in the game as well.
Well, as long as they've tried to go some way to unruining it, that would be also a definite step in the right direction. The first couple of Gran Turismo games, I appreciate. What I loved about them was that you could make it as challenging or as as facile as you fancied it. If you wanted to take a 900 horsepower car to race a group of family hatchbacks, you could. The game didn't judge you for it. It just sort of wondered what on earth you were up to.
I think we all did that, Ed.
The more recent ones, they largely got rid of grid starts. It just ceased to become a racing game. It just became a soulless pursuit exercise. And the points system was just banal. And, I can't remember the last one I actually bought and played, the one with the Lunar Rover simulator, because obviously that's exactly what I'm looking for in a racing game. And I just think there was absolutely none of the joy that went with the first couple of them. And I appreciate that I've got older and sadder and all the rest of it, but it just felt cynic. It was a cynical grinding exercise unless you were prepared to spend umpty £1,000 on downloadable content. I just couldn't be bothered with it.
I'd race for about 10 minutes and then decide I wasn't any good at it, so then I would start going the wrong way around the track and then trying to do other things and seeing if I could cause huge pile-ups and all the rest of it.
Grand Theft Auto was born. Well, that's how Grand Theft Auto came into being. So.
Yeah, I would just realise that it wasn't for me. I'd get bored with it and then I'd just smash them up and get bored with it and then never go back and play it again.
You weren't invited back.
I obviously have a higher boredom threshold than you, but Gran Turismo 1 and Gran Turismo 2 are stone cold classics, absolutely magnificent. And I just want, in some ways, I would like to have got, just make me a beautiful version of those, and I would have been as happy as the proverbial pig. So I will wait and see what the situation is. I mean, obviously, I don't have the hardware as it stands at the minute either, but there was a time when it would have been unthinkable for me not to have had this pretty much instantly, and at the moment I just can't summon up any excitement about it at all.
Right, I think it's time to move on. Thanks for the games news, Mark. Let's move on to the Oppo UDP 205. This is an Ultra HD Blu-ray player that costs £1,600.
Actually, it doesn't cost that much. I was slightly wrong last week. Okay. It only costs £1,399.
Oh, well, that's a lot better than I'll have two.
Hodge will buy two on Prime Day.
Yeah. Wait for those prices to come down.
Yes. This is an expensive player. There's no question about that. Obviously, £1,399.
So the first question, Steve, I'm not being cruel here, but the thing is, if it's doing things right, as we've said week after week recently when we've been reviewing these players, if it's not tampering with video signal, then this will have identical picture quality to the £188 Panasonic.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're talking about playing an Ultra HD Blu-ray over a digital output, of course it's the same. Obviously, you can find other areas where there may be incremental improvements, things like upscaling. So if you're playing a DVD or a Blu-ray, perhaps, then you might find that Oppo's scaling is extremely good, and it is really good. But then again, you can get the same performance in that sense from the much cheaper, relatively speaking, UDP 203, which you can get for £649. Let's be honest, this player isn't aimed, I don't suppose Oppo expecting to sell very many of them for a start. It's aimed at a very specific part of the market. If you're looking for digital transport, if you're looking for something to play discs over HDMI, then clearly don't go dropping £1,400 on this because you're wasting your money. There are lots of great players you can pick up in the £200 to £300, £200 to £400 range that will do the job brilliantly for you. If you want SACD and DVD audio playback, then certainly look at the Sony, the X800, because that will do that, and it's only going to be £350. So there are definitely other alternatives. This player really is aimed at someone looking for a very high quality disc player with analog outputs, so that really where all the money and where the differences are in terms of the analog outputs on this. So if you're looking for digital output, then clearly don't worry about it. But if you're looking for something that can be used as a player with an analog output, then that's what this is aimed at. It's aimed at people who want to buy a really, really expensive high-end universal disc player. So obviously it plays CD, DVD audio, Blu-ray, 2D and 3D, Ultra HD Blu-ray, and SACD as well. So it plays all the disc formats, and it has extremely high quality digital analog conversion built into it. The same as the DAC that Ed is currently reviewing, the Oppo, what's it called, Sonica?
Sonica, yes.
Yeah. So if that's what you're looking for, if you're looking for something with XLR outputs and this kind of thing, then yes, it probably ticks your boxes and will deliver a stunning performance. But clearly, if you're just looking for an Ultra HD Blu-ray player, then it's not even in consideration, is it? I mean, there are loads and loads of other players available at a fraction of the cost that will do just as good a job in terms of digital output of picture and sound over HDMI.
And slightly awkwardly, if you then also, Oppo haven't done themselves any favours here, because you could take the £188 one, which I believe has an optical out, and bolt on the Sonica DAC, and you'd still be up.
Yeah.
Over the cost of the and I wouldn't necessarily want to bet money on being able to tell the difference. And as we've discussed, what Steve and I were discussing on Skype yesterday, just to further stick two fingers in your eyes, the Sonica DAC has got Tidal and Spotify support inbuilt as part of its app. And what's more, it's one of the very nicest integrated Tidal apps I've ever used. And yeah, that's sort of a bit galling, because as I understand it, the Blu-ray player doesn't have either of those.
Currently, as it stands, it has no apps whatsoever.
Yeah.
I'm sure they will add apps over time, but right now, zip.
Yeah, which again is another thing. I mean, I know it's not the be all and end all, but if you pick up the Samsung or the Panasonic and so on, they come with Netflix and Amazon in 4K with HDR, so they start to become a nice little media hub. Especially the Samsungs who can do the proper refresh.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a cracking players for watching streaming services on. Absolutely brilliant. Okay. There's going to be a segment of the market, a very small segment of the market, that are going to look at, and don't get me wrong, it's a gorgeous looking, I love a big player, built like a tank, sight and operation, smooth, it's all, you're paying for a certain degree of build quality and you'll get that definitely. And if you like that kind of thing and you've got the money to spend and you want balanced XLR outputs on the back of your player and all these sorts of things, then clearly that's what it's aimed at. But I think for the majority of people, clearly, certainly in terms of the digital side of things, it's exactly the same basically as the 205. I mean, they will talk about things like, reclock and jitter and all this sort of stuff. But in my experience, any half decent player over digital, it's going to sound the same as any other player over digital. And I think a lot of it's placebo, whether you can tell the difference or not. Yeah, there's going to be people that are going to drop 1,400 quid on a player, and I'm sure they'll be very happy with their purchase. But in reality, if you're looking for an Ultra HD Blu-ray player, there are lots of great choices at significantly less money. And my endless reviews of players is almost over now. I've only got one more to go with the LG UP 970. Okay,
good for you. So the Oppos have the Dolby Vision on board. So this is going to become the big hot potato really going forward, because people are now, like we say, they're going to take boxes. They're going to go with the product that has everything on it. So this is going to be the products that have Dolby Vision on them. So the big question is going to be, is there any perceivable difference between HDR10 and Dolby Vision content? Now, I think there's two caveats to this, Steve. I think where Dolby Vision is supposed to really work is with TVs that aren't quite as capable as the higher end TVs. So TVs that roll off at, say, about 600 to 800 nits they're going to benefit Dolby Vision content more than the top end sets. So that's one caveat that we have to mention there, which I'm sure you're going to come on to with your comparisons. And the other is that technically there really shouldn't be that big a difference, because HDR10 is actually part of Dolby Vision anyway.
Yeah, I should probably start by saying that my testing to date has only been done with one TV, the B7, and using the Oppo 203, which, as you just said, Phil, supports Dolby Vision. So, and it's probably no coincidence that LG have been in bed with Dolby Vision in terms of their OLED TVs, because, as you just said, where it can really add value is on TVs that perhaps haven't got quite the peak brightness of certain other TVs. So this, so far, my research so far is based on one TV. What will be interesting is comparing a TV that can deliver the full at least 1000 nits of peak brightness and the full DCI color space against using HDR10 against Dolby Vision. And also there are going to be TVs like the ZD9 and the XC94, which are full array backlight LCD televisions that can deliver well over 1000 nits and will also have Dolby Vision. It'll be interesting to see what it looks like on those. So at the moment, my testing is based upon one TV, comparing Dolby Vision to HDR10. And I have to say that the difference is not night and day. There is a perceivable incremental improvement in the picture quality on Dolby Vision, but you really have to go looking for it. Sometimes you think, oh, that looks better. Because where it really adds value, I think, is obviously with an HDR10 encode, you're talking about a single peak brightness setting of, say, 1000 nits, or in the case of Dolby Vision, 4000 nits for the whole film. And where it struggles sometimes is going from a bright scene to a dark scene, where suddenly, you've got your peak highlights set and everything else becomes darker. So where Dolby Vision can help out is because it's dynamic metadata, it can adjust from scene to scene, even frame to frame if it needed to. And therefore, you do get a more consistent experience across the entire film. I've only got 3 Dolby Vision discs so far: Despicable Me, Despicable Me 2, and Power Rangers. Now, Despicable Me 1 and 2, obviously, they're computer animated, very bright animation. I definitely felt like I was getting a little bit more detail and pop in the highlights, particularly on the Dolby Vision experience. Where I felt it was much more noticeable was Power Rangers, because that's got live action in it. It's real people, and there's more darker scenes, and it's more of a it's a much more mixed material experience in terms of the content, in terms of going from scene to scene. And there were definitely scenes. There was a scene where they encounter basically like a crystal wall at night in a quarry, and the highlights on the crystal, the reflections of the light really popped in a way in Dolby Vision the way they didn't on HDR10. So I do think there were minor differences and improvements in the experience, but as I say, it's not a night and day difference. If you watched HDR10, you're not thinking, well, that looks terrible, because it still looks really good. But if I start comparing scenes and picking specific scenes and going over them again and again and again, which meant switching from one player to the next, was a real pain. Because I've got the one disc and 2 players connected to the same TV. So I was using the Panasonic UB900 for the HDR10 experience, and then the 203, the Oppo 203 for the Dolby Vision experience. I did feel that I was getting a slightly better experience, but it wasn't night and day, and I don't think anyone who's currently just watching HDR10 needs to feel that they're massively missing out in any way at all.
Did Philips OLEDs have Dolby Vision?
No, they don't. They don't. No, not yet, at least. I mean, I know Philips have been looking. I mean, if you're talking about who supports Dolby Vision, LG, Sony, currently Lerva supports Dolby Vision on their TVs. I know that Hisense have been talking about it, and I've seen them. They've mentioned it quite a few times, so they've been thinking about doing it. Philips in the States, which is actually Funai, support Dolby Vision. Philips outside the US, the rest of the world, TP Vision, don't currently, although again they have been looking at it, and currently at least Panasonic and Samsung do not support it. So it's kind of half and half at the moment in terms of support. But in terms of players, as we mentioned, Oppo do support it, and LG have a player, the UP970, which supports Dolby Vision. And that would be your cheapest option, by the way, if you wanted to buy a player, the Dolby Vision, because that's about 280 quid. So you can get that.
It was 230 on Amazon Prime.
Was it? Damn.
I nearly bought one of them as well.
Damn. Because I was thinking of getting one as a cheap option to have in the lounge with the B7. So yeah, I mean, it's obviously early days in terms of Dolby Vision. I do think I can see the benefits to a certain degree. It's incremental, but there are certain benefits there. And obviously, if you think about it logically, I like the whole idea of Dolby Vision being a closed ecosystem from start to finish, where you know how it's encoded on the pulsar monitor. You calibrate the display to their standards, and everything's controlled along the whole distribution route, and you've got dynamic metadata in there, and you're delivering the best possible experience regardless of the TV's capabilities. I like all the aspects of it. I think if it's true that Disney are now supporting Dolby Vision on their discs, that's going to be a real boost for Dolby Vision just because of all the titles that Disney have got. There's certainly a critical mass developing now in terms of players, displays, and content, not just in terms of discs, but also in terms of streaming. And that's another area I think where it's important. Streaming is another area where it really can add value because, again, you're not talking about ideal conditions. But if you've got a good HDR10 TV, and a good player, and some of the great discs out there that use HDR10, you're still getting a fantastic experience, and don't think that in some way you're missing out, because I don't think you are really.
People will feel like that though.
Well, they will. They
particularly our audience and our members, because they want the best of the best, don't they? So, if you can get if you can get another 2% out of the picture, then why not?
Like I said, where it would be interesting would be comparing the same film in HDR10 on a really good HDR10 TV, something like, say, a Q9, which you can deliver when well over 1,000 nits peak brightness and a full 100% of DCI-P3 against, say the B7 in Dolby Vision. That would make an interesting comparison, and we will do that at some point when we can.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Steve. I mean, it is a subject that we're going to come back to probably every week for the next 2 years, so look forward to that.
There's still a lot of research to be done, I think, in this area in terms of comparisons, but I've just started what is a long process, but initial impressions are good.
This will be your life's work, will it?
Yeah.
That's what you'll be remembered for. Steve Dolby Vision Withers.
Dobley.
Oh, by the way, Steve, Power Rangers aren't real people.
Well, the actors playing them are.
It's just the way you said it. Listen back.
Well, it's not entirely CG. Obviously, there are elements of reality.
Yeah, well, let's stop talking about the classic films and move on and talk movie news. So with this one, I've got a bone to pick because I was prepared to go and see War for the Planet of the Apes on Tuesday, because in the UK we had advanced screenings on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then the film opens Friday. And because the film opens on Friday, that's the only time you can see the 2D version. So for Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, it was 3D only in cinemas, which I wasn't happy with. I wasn't happy with the fact that I would have to pay £2 extra. I just thought the principle of it, it's not because I'm a tight Scotsman, but just the principle of it. But, it's annoying, Steve, because I'd like to have seen it early so I could talk about it with you today, but unfortunately I wasn't forced myself to go and see a 3D film that I really didn't. It wasn't filmed in 3D, and I really don't want to go and see it in 3D. I know
I wasn't too keen about that either.
Yeah, but it's your job, you've got to go and do it.
Yeah, it was a bit annoying that it was only available in 3D on those early days when it was being first screened. Because, as you said, Phil, it wasn't actually shot with 3D cameras. It's a post-conversion. Pretty good post-conversion, I have to say. But I would have preferred to have seen it in 2D. However, I did go and see it, and I have to say I did thoroughly enjoy it. I think this reboot of the Planet of the Apes movies has been really good. I thought Rise was a big surprise. Rise of the Planet of the Apes, I thought, was a big surprise in terms of its quality, the story it told, and the way that it cleverly rebooted the whole idea and the concept and how the apes came to evolve into speaking and what happened to mankind, etc. I think they set it up really well in that film. I thought that Dawn carried that idea on in an interesting way. I thought that it had real balls to actually have a film where large chunks of it are apes speaking to one another with sign language using subtitles in a major blockbuster movie. I think that was an unusual experience. I thought it was a really well-made film. It had good protagonists. It had, even the villains weren't necessarily villainous. They had a point of view that you could understand. And I thought it was a really well done film. Interestingly, that film was shot in native 3D, and when I saw it at the cinema, I saw it in 2D. So there you go. War for the Planet of the Apes obviously follows on from Dawn. And again, it has many of the same attributes of the earlier films. I think it's got some interesting characters. It's got really interesting ideas. The way that it's tying in things to lead up, if you like, to where you could see the original Planet of the Apes actually starting from is very clever. I think the animation and the motion capture performances and the animation of the apes is unbelievable. They've gradually got better over the 3 films, but I mean, now it's just, you totally forget that it isn't a real talking ape. It's just staggering, the level of animation, the quality of the effects in this film is unbelievable. Despite the title, it's not an all-out war film from beginning to end. There's a very big action sequence at the beginning and at the end, both of which are really impressive. But the middle section is not quite perhaps what you're expecting. It's got a number of different influences on it in terms of films. You can clearly see where it's been influenced by things like The Outlaw Josie Wales, by The Great Escape, by I'm trying to think what other films it's got quite a few obvious references in it. That Apocalypse Now, there's loads of references to Apocalypse Now, quite literal references to it at one point. I think the villain's interesting, although he's called the Colonel. He's clearly based on Colonel Kurtz. I do think it has a couple of things I don't agree with. It has that classic thing where the villain's got the hero right in front of him. Why doesn't he just kill him? Why don't they just kill the hero when they've got the chance? They never do, and it obviously backfires later. But I don't want to go into too much in terms of the plot, but I thought it did most of it really well. There are things I have got issues with, but overall, I thought it was entertaining, well made. It tied up the story to a certain degree over the 3 films very well. It set up certain things for later that I think it did really well. Brought in some interesting ideas. The performances, both human and motion capture, are brilliant. The effects are quite staggering. It looks amazing. The 3D was pretty good for post-conversion as well, although I would have preferred to have seen it in 2D. And overall, I thought it was a really good, solid conclusion to what you can see as a trilogy of films. I think Kaz gave it 8, and I'd agree, 8 out of 10.
Okay, good stuff. So films opening this Friday. There's a biggie.
There's a very big film opening, yes. So we've got 2 films opening this Friday. One, Shroon's already seen at a press screening called Shot, which is actually a documentary about Mick Rockley, ironically, the rock photographer. I guarantee if you've got albums from the 70s and 80s, you've almost certainly got at least one album cover that was shot by Mick Rock. Interesting guy, and certainly a subject of a very interesting documentary. But the big release this week, and unfortunately it opens on Friday, so I won't be able to see it before next week's podcast recording, but that's Dunkirk, the new film from Chris Nolan, obviously about Dunkirk, and shot in IMAX and 70mm. So if you get a chance to see it projected in IMAX and 70mm, I'm sure it's going to look absolutely amazing. As is often the case with Christopher Nolan, he's gone for an enormous amount of realism, using wherever possible real ships, real Spitfires, real Messerschmitts.
An enormous amount of aspect ratios.
I don't know if he's going to be doing that so much. If he starts doing, I don't know why anyone would think switching aspect ratios from scene to scene and shot to shot is something anyone would want to do. I'm all for shooting it in 70mm in a single aspect ratio and going for the higher, the high resolution of the larger film format. But yeah, as you saw with Transformers a couple of weeks ago, how annoying is it when it just switches aspect ratio all the time? So if you get a chance to see it in IMAX in the higher resolution, larger film format, then I'm sure it'll look spectacular.
We won't be able to talk about that next week on the podcast, but we will talk about it the week following because we will have been to see that. Right, so Blu-rays this week very quickly.
Just one major release, which is Beauty and the Beast, the new Disney live-action version of their animated classic, which has been unbelievably successful considering it's almost an identical film in terms of plot and dialogue and songs and everything else. But yeah, been a massive hit, made over $1 billion, and comes out on disc. I'm sure it'll look and sound stunning, as you'd expect from Disney on Blu-ray. No Ultra HD Blu-ray release, of course, because they haven't started doing that yet. They won't start talking about Guardians of the Galaxy. But yeah, that's out this week, and it should be a reference Blu-ray.
You can guarantee that's going to turn up on UHD Blu-ray later in the year then?
Well, it'd be interesting to see how they do start going back over there. I would expect, definitely we've got Guardians in August. Everyone's saying that the next one will be Pirates of the Caribbean. The 5th film will get an Ultra HD Blu-ray release. I noticed that's already been announced for Blu-ray with, interestingly, a Dolby Atmos soundtrack. So clearly Disney are starting to move in that direction as well, just in terms of soundtracks for their discs. And then I'm prepared to put good money on seeing Ultra HD Blu-rays of Rogue One and Force Awakens out in time for Episode 8. Okay,
cool. Any other UHD news?
Well, there's been an awful lot of debate about Guardians of the Galaxy and whether it's got Dolby Vision, because Bill Hunt over at the Digital Bits asked Disney on 2 occasions, and they said yes, the disc will be using Dolby Vision. Then they came back and said we're not sure. So there seems, and other people have been reporting that it doesn't, just HDR10. So there's no actual confirmation yet as to whether it's going to have Dolby Vision or not. Definitely will have Dolby Atmos, but will it have Dolby Vision? We don't know categorically. Logically, you'd think that would make sense because everyone was talking about Disney waiting for Dolby Vision to reach a point of critical mass before they came into the marketplace. I'd be surprised if it didn't, but yeah, there seems to be a little bit of doubt. Hopefully there should be more clarification because this weekend is D23, their big Disney convention. We might get better clarification about it then.
Do they have blinking conventions just for studios now, do they?
Yeah.
What is the world coming to?
Yeah, right after Comic-Con too, so they're clearly deliberately doing that. Otherwise, though, it looks like September the 5th will be the release date for Close Encounters on Ultra HD Blu-ray, which I'm quite looking forward to.
Oh yeah,
to celebrate its 40th anniversary. That should be worth getting.
Yeah. Right, so I saw something online this week that got me really excited, and that's Stranger Things 2 got a new trailer, a poster, and a release date. The poster is absolutely stunning. I think the poster gives more feel than the trailer does. I mean, the trailer doesn't give you anything. Basically, it's just the music and a few flashing shots, but the poster art is just wow. What is that thing in the sky? I'm so looking forward to this, and it is going to be... Now, they haven't said whether all the episodes are going to drop at the same time, which did happen with season 1, or whether we're going to get one.
Yeah, they will. It's Netflix own production, so it will be available.
So they're all going to...
streaming on the 17th of October, I think it is, isn't it?
No, 27th, is it not?
Is it 27th? All right, yeah. Okay.
Halloween.
Yeah. That's a nice weekend then.
Yeah, well, that's that weekend gone for me. That is it. So, well, the weather's probably bad anyway. There's no need to take the Mustang out, so I can spend the weekend watching Stranger Things too. Right, so that just about wraps up the podcast. The only thing is that we mentioned Dunkirk, and of course that's set World War II. It's one of these Titanic films, isn't it, Steve? I mean, we all know how it ends, basically. I guess it's going to have to be in how it's told. And
well, it's going to be interesting because... Yes, we know that we know how Dunkirk ended, and we know it became sort of like a successful failure, if you like. But I was watching a documentary about Dunkirk last week, and for decades, even at the time, certainly before Battle of Britain, the Army and the Navy felt the RAF did not protect them and didn't do their job properly. Actually, it was not true at all. The RAF lost 600 planes battling Luftwaffe and trying to keep them at bay. But obviously they were doing it further away from Dunkirk or so high up no one could see them. But interestingly, what happened was that they were struggling to hold the Luftwaffe back until they actually deployed the first Spitfires, and that turned the tide. And everything they learned from fighting at Dunkirk was then employed. That experience was then employed in the Battle of Britain. So it was a key point, not just in terms of getting those men off the beaches, so we didn't have, we had the troops back, but also in terms of how the RAF responded to the Luftwaffe going forward. So it was a turning point. I'd say a turning point in the war. And if we had lost 400,000 men at Dunkirk, then I think we'd have had to surrender. Well, not surrender so much, but certainly negotiate some sort of peace with the Nazis, and it would have turned World War II because we wouldn't have been fighting continually. America wouldn't have come into the war, and things would have been very different. So it's a vital, a successful failure from our perspective, a bit like the film we've been quoting from at the beginning and we'll quote from at the end, which is A Bridge Too Far, about Arnhem and Operation Market Garden. Again, a successful failure. And my favourite World War II, well, actually my favourite war movie, but certainly my favourite World War II war movie, because I think it just really covers that whole operation in such detail and a level of accuracy you don't often see in movies. I love it. But yeah, Dunkirk, I'm interested to see how Christopher Nolan plays this, because obviously he's going to do it from different perspectives. And I think it'll be interesting to get the story told, in detail and accurately in a way that probably hasn't been up until now.
Anybody else want to try and get a word in edgeways?
I have to say the Germans do very well at their own stories. I have to say, point to both Das Boot and Stalingrad as two of the most visceral, thoughtful, and very, at times entirely depressing war films going. Stalingrad in particular has one of the bleakest endings of any film I've ever seen of any genre. They are both exceptionally good, and I rate them very highly. One film I loved as a kid is a completely different sort of aspect of the same sort of story, if you will, was Hope and Glory, which I don't know if anyone remembers. Was about set in on the home front. It was a kid's experience of war and evacuation and all sorts of things. I thought that was really nicely observed and really a very, very clever piece of filmmaking. I thoroughly enjoyed that. And then after that, it all starts to go. You get degrees of excellence. I mean, the original Battle of Britain, fought with large bits of the Spanish Air Force, is tremendously impressive. Considering its relative age, then after that, it starts to sort of not so sure. I mean, obviously, there are things like Private Ryan and Fury and things like that, but I don't know, they're quite stylized. Private Ryan isn't deliberately, I suppose it's stylized to an extent, but it just, it completely ignores the existence of various facets of D-Day and so on and so forth. But yeah, the German ones for me, sorry to drag that tortuously back on topic, they are the best too.
Did you know there was a series of Das Boot coming out, Ed?
I was loosely aware of it. It's one of those things as and when it sort of happens. I've actually been watching a lot of telly recently. I mean, we've got Game of Thrones kicking off again on Monday, which I shall be spending some time on. But no, I've been music and writing, because I'm going on holiday at the end of the month, and I've been told if I bring any work on holiday with me, I will be drowned off the South Devon coast. So I'm going for it at the moment.
You know what? I've never been overly keen on World War II films, largely because most of them, as I was growing up, all seemed to be from like about the 60s and 70s, and they all seemed to feature fairly old actors who seemed far too old to be in active combat, and it looked like them kind of playing soldier, that kind of thing, But I enjoyed The Dirty Dozen. Probably the one I like most from a kind of stylistic point of view would be The Thin Red Line. I prefer the kind of non-European centric view of things. The Pacific theatre of war, very slow, very contemplative, very atmospheric. Kind of feels more like a character study, and so maybe it's the fact that I've never really overly enjoyed World War II films in general. That one feels the most kind of almost abstract as a film just to enjoy.
I've studied the Guadalcanal campaign. I had to do it at university, and I remember watching The Thin Red Line and going, "God, they never made much play of Sean Penn crying in fields of grass as they seem to in the film." But and then obviously that sort of led on to, I didn't realise that Terrence Malick has such a thing for long grass, to the extent where he was sued by someone for wasting so much time just filming in long grass.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of brings it back to the Dunkirk and Christopher Nolan's interpretation of this. How honest is it going to be? Because for most films, I mean, even Schindler's List, which tries to be, it doesn't try to bang you over the head with stuff, but even so, it still has its bias built in there. So should we expect these things to be accurate, or should we just expect them to be entertainment and tell us a story, basically?
I think if you're trying to recreate a specific actual historical event, like say Operation Market Garden or The Longest Day with D-Day, or Schindler's List, where you're dealing with historical events, I think it behoves you to try and remain as accurate as possible. And nothing annoys me more than watching a film, particularly when I was a kid and I was really into World War II, and I used to make loads of tank models and that sort of stuff. When they used to see when you'd see something that was clearly not a German tank, like a Sherman just covered with swastikas or something, it used to annoy the hell out of me because that's not accurate. Do it properly. I love watching Kelly's Heroes because they had a Tiger tank in that. Same thing I love about Fury is because they use real tanks in that, a real Tiger tank. Fantastic. But if it's not based upon anything real, anything historically accurate, then I guess you can have fun with it. I mean, I love Where Eagles Dare, even though it's absolute cobblers, and you got a bequiffed Clint Eastwood holding two Schmeiser machine guns and letting rip with it. It's fantastic fun, though. You've got to admit, it's absolutely fantastic fun, even though it's historical cobblers.
What about Inglourious Bastards? If you're talking about absolute cobblers.
So there's room for interpretation depending on your approach. But if you're going with something that you're claiming to be historically accurate, then there's an onus on you to actually stick to the historical accuracy. So, for example, with Dunkirk, you can see how Nolan deals with the fact that the German halt order, where they stopped their advance, even though they had us on the run, they stopped their advance, which bought us some time. And there's debate about why the Germans stopped. Was it an order from Hitler? Was it because Goering thought he could let Luftwaffe hammer us instead to show Nazi power in terms of air power? Was it because there are lots of reasons why they stopped, or theories as to why the Germans stopped when they did? How Nolan and that's open to interpretation to a degree because not everything's exactly known, obviously. be interesting to see how he portrays the RAF within Dunkirk, because, as I say, they were wrongly accused of not doing their job at the time, to the point apparently where RAF pilots that had been shot down and were trying to get off the beach were told to get their RAF uniforms off because otherwise they wouldn't get let on the boats, which seems really harsh. And obviously there's the whole the myth of the little boats going out to help, when in fact most soldiers were actually got off by the large ships. But there's that kind of that myth of the little boats coming to help, and that kind of Dunkirk legend. Still, I'm sure it'll be. I've got a real issue with Nolan in some aspects of his filmmaking. I thought Interstellar was absolute tripe, but I'll be interested to see how he handles an historical event and whether he does it justice.
I'm quite a fan of World War II movies, actually, but you've probably covered my favourite was Das Boot is probably my favourite as per Ed. I've not seen Stalingrad, but I'll just try and check that one out. I'm going to say 2 TV series, Pacific and Band of Brothers. Having 10 hours to tell the story seems to make a big bit of a difference in the investment in the characters. And
that's what I was really going to go into. Yeah, I was going to mention them. They're not really movies, but
they've got the production values of a movie.
They've got the production values of a film, though, haven't they? So,
it's like a 10-hour movie. I must have binged those in 2 or 3
nights.
I mean,
my only thing there is that it's only the American side of the story. Which does get a little bit annoying, especially in the European theatre where you know that there's a big mix of nationalities all taking part there in the battles and stuff, and you'd think it would be nice if they'd covered that aspect, but again, it's an American production, so they're going to concentrate on the American side of things, aren't they? But brilliantly done. I mean, so realistic.
Yeah. I haven't seen it, but I know Steve. I mean, Hacksaw Ridge is supposed to be
that's good,
pretty visceral.
It's very, very visceral, and also quite unusually for a film. It actually downplays what the guy did in reality because no one would believe it. Apparently, he saved something like 72 people that day, including saving some Japanese injured soldiers.
Although it wasn't a massive cliff, was it? It was just like
it wasn't quite as massive as they show, but he did save 72 people. They only show him saving about 30 people in the film because they thought if we show him saving more than that, no one's going to believe it. But yes, Mel Gibson can do violence and war very well, and he does outdo himself in the battle scenes, which are spectacular. Also, I think worth mentioning, I quite like the idea that Clint Eastwood had with his 2 films about Iwo Jima, Flags of Our Fathers, and then counterpointing, which is really not so much about the battle, but about after the battle and the myth that surrounds it and the idea of the guys who put the flag up and that sort of thing. That was a really interesting take on the battle. And then doing Sounds of Iwo Jima, so they showed Letters from Iwo Jima, which shows the battle from the Japanese perspective, which again is not something that's done very often in Western cinema, at least. And then from that point of view, you mentioned German films, Ed. I think Come and See, a Russian film about their experiences on the Eastern Front, is an utterly brutal, harrowing experience, but certainly gives you a taste of how truly, because we obviously think about World War II being won by us and the Americans, but actually World War II was won by the Russians. And the battles on the Eastern Front, outstrip even the brutality of the Pacific Theatre War in terms of what happened there and the sheer scale of the Eastern Front. The Battle of Kursk, for example, the biggest tank battle in history. You got no concept of what happened and the 30 million Russians that died fighting the Nazis. That's where it was won and lost. So
even on film, even if they take a little bit of dramatic license and so on, there's a lot of brave people with a lot of courage. And a lot more courage than I probably would have, going into battle and fighting for what they believe in and all the rest of it. And there was, millions of lives given during that war. And sometimes you look at it and you think, well, is it a bit perverse that we're looking at entertainment in terms of films, for these subject matters, or should the stories be told? It's an interesting counterpoint, that. And they always say that the veterans never spoke about what they did, and they never they didn't want the spectacle of being. It's not like today's society where everybody wants to be famous. They didn't want that. They shunned that. They'd done their service. They'd done their bit, and which is a bit of a shame because I think there's a lot of stories that should have been told that probably never will be told now because the people are gone now. Well,
yes, but people deal with events of that sort of momentous nature in different ways. Anyone that wants to actually investigate that further, there is a magnificent book by a man called Glenn Gray. It was written, 20 or 30 years ago now. It's called The Warriors, and it's a fantastically clever book, and it genuinely alters your perception of what happens in not just combat, because some of the things can be drawn to other lessons can be drawn in other areas about the nature of how certain people react and who's doing what, and then how people deal with what they did afterwards. Great book, well worth a read.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we've covered everything that we need to cover, and we're well over time yet again this week. So my thanks to Steve Withers.
I thought everyone knew that God was a Scotsman.
He is. Mark Hodgkinson.
I'm terribly sorry about all this,
Ed Selley.
I always felt we tried to go a bridge too far.
And Mark Botwright.
Both ends at once.
Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark AVForums for latest reviews, news and video, and of course leave us those 5-star ratings on iTunes, but only if you enjoyed the show. I'm Phil Hinton, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.